Good evening. I'm Michael Blaze, and I sort of want to touch upon something. I don't think I'm going to take you all the way. I mean, if you want, but the concept that is embedded in this document that is supposedly a speech given by a gentleman by the name of Willie Lynch, and you see the connection, or you might recognize the connection between lynching and black people. There's a definite connection. So this Willie Lynch guy, in 1712, supposedly came from some Jamaican plantation, and he gave a particular type of formula for people to handle their slaves, their property. And the way he starts off, as he was riding down the river, he smelled a dead man hanging from a tree. And his opinion when he got to the other slave owners was he wasn't upset because they were killing people, he was upset because they were destroying valuable property. So he's like, you guys are blowing the game. You're not supposed to kill them, you're supposed to work them to death or whatever, but not really to death. And so he came with a little formula, and I'm not going to get into the whole document. There's a lot of controversy about whether it's real or not. I have outlined a number of differences among slaves, and I have these differences. And I take these differences and I make them bigger than they really are. I use fear, distrust, envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On the top of the list is age, but it is not there because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, the size of the plantation you're on, and the status of the plantation, the attitude of the owners, whether the slaves live in the valley or on the hill, east, west, north, south, have fine or coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of actions, but before that I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust. Envy is stronger than adulation, respect or admiration. If you want to look it up, you can go look it up. I don't want to really project this unless it's something that you want to get into. But what it's saying in general is that we have been put at odds with each other for like 400 years. If I'm light-skinned and you're dark-skinned, there's something there that we can't touch upon. We are not creating it. It's sort of like we inherited it.
And you talked about us inheriting this thing, and
unknowingly.
And that's something that we talked about. The term, self-hatred is like we don't even know that we hate ourselves.
Right.
We do things that other people want us to do to each other, because they can benefit from it. And one of the things that that goes back to your self concept, how you feel about yourself. Is what you know about yourself. And one thing that we did inherit, and this is something I always had an issue with when I was younger, is that we limit our history to slavery, and we say we are the descendant of slaves.
Meaning you're an African American.
Yeah, meaning that's where your history started.
Right, that's
it's
it.
Like
you're just an African American.
Some slaves just popped up out the ground, and that's where your history starts.
I want to touch upon this very briefly, and I'm not. This isn't a racist. This is just my observation. And you the public out there, you can just hear what I'm saying, and you tell me if it sounds like we are alienating, other peoples are coming together. And I'll give you an example. For instance, being Asian. What does that mean? When they do the census, it's all Asian people together. Chinese, Japanese, Korean. Now we know for over 2,000 years the Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans have hated each other. They have killed each other non-stop. Even now when they're in their own places, they don't like each other. They're united as one common front. And what does that unification mean? They have stores, they have banks, they have businesses. I challenge you, other than Fubo, Fibo, whatever that is, and I bet they don't do it either, you won't find one product you go out and buy that black people manufacture. Not even a hair product. Not even BET. BET is owned by white people. So this is sort of what we're talking about. If you're Hispanic, what does that mean? If you speak Spanish, so if you're from Puerto Rico, you're from Cuba, you're from Dominican Republic, you're from Spain, you're from little Puerto Rico, you're from Mexico, you're from wherever you're at, all of a sudden you're Hispanic. And the census recognizes Hispanic people as one thing. They give them all this money and school and whatever. Then all of a sudden, you get to black people, and all of a sudden, we're just African Americans. Like we're not linked with all African descendants. Mm-hmm. So we have no power. And that power that they put together, like I say, they purchase property, they purchase banks, they make loans, they invest in their youth, in their community. You know, you can go and see their children getting a good education, so on and so on. And that's because they're united. We are African Americans, yeah, we're from the greatest culture that's ever lived. Right. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that. How can we not be Pan-Africans and all blacks unite as a one, just like Hispanics, just like Asian and anybody else that comes here, they unite.
And I was going to say, and
overcome their difficulties and find the things that link them together.
And that has been part of our dilemma is, you know, there are a lot of people that will fight you over calling them African. You know, it's like, I'm not African. You know, even the word African. But I have a lot of friends from all over, you know, from all over the world. And the other thing about African American is that there are African people that live in the Caribbean, that live in South America, that call themselves African American. And a lot of times we have a narrow view, you know. And some of these African Americans, they speak Spanish, they speak French, they speak different languages, you know, and that's part of the process that we went through in slavery is cutting us off from our past and and making us be conditioned to the point that we think that we are descendants of slaves. We have no history before then. The process of turning someone into a slave is a process of dehumanization, where you strip that person of who they are and their connection to a legacy, to a history, to a family, to a community, and you redefine them. And that's what's happened in our historical experience. So we've become objects, you know, we've become property, you know, and we inherited this concept, and so we are defined. We talked about the influence of the media. We're defined by people outside of our own culture.
Well, you know, we've come to the close again, and unfortunately it went too fast. I mean, we're talking about, like, you know, a 400-year period, so we don't have enough time in our 28.5 minutes, so I'm going to have to invite you to come back again. Once again, this is Michael Blaze, Unified Fathers for Life. As always, I want to dedicate this show to my beautiful daughter, Gloria Nakia Blaze. I want to say, let God be magnified. And by making that statement, I'm not knocking what you believe in God, but God is a reflection of who you are. Inside of each person, there's the perfect essence of God, just like you are. There's nothing wrong with being yourself. The whole is very moment.